Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Coming Out Cosmic podcast. My name is Christine Nowinski, ET contactee, awakening coach, and founder of Coming Out Cosmic. This podcast is for those who are going through a spiritual awakening. And when I say spiritual awakening, I mean those of us who are questioning reality, who are starting to realize that there's much more out there than what we've been programmed to believe. And this podcast is especially for those who really love to talk about aliens and strange paranormal experiences. So I'm here for your crazy stories if you're here for mine. On this podcast episode, we are going to talk about the Reptilians. If you know me from TikTok, you know that I love to talk about the Reptilians, and it's not because they're my favorite ET race by any means. It is literally because I think the Reptilians are a hot topic right now as people awaken more and more. I find that this is usually one of the first ET races that people become aware of. Because when you do awaken spiritually and you start questioning your reality, you tend to go down some rabbit holes and they tend to be more negative. You know, you start questioning, like, why are there chemtrails in the sky? Why are we always being pushed medicine by big pharma? Why are there so many toxins in our food? Why is society the way that it is? And when you start asking those questions, you start to realize, like, oh shit, maybe human beings are more controlled than we have ever possibly considered. And maybe we're not just controlled by money hungry human beings, but maybe these human beings are not actually human at all. And that's when you start to get into the topic of reptilians. As always, take or leave anything within this podcast episode. I always have to leave the caveat of this is for entertainment only whenever talking about the reptilians, because otherwise my videos will get taken down. And for those of you who want to know even more about the reptilians, they want to know why are they here, where did they come from, what do they even look like, I do have a reptilians course for sale on my Pensite link in bio. I'll link it in the show notes, and it goes through all of that background knowledge of the reptilians from a very high vibrational place, because they are not to be feared, they're just to be known about. And I do believe that the more information we share, the more knowledge we share, the less darkness there is in this world. I believe that light equals information. You shine light on something. Darkness is just lack of information. You're in the dark about something. So the more light we shed on reptilians, the more light we shed on things we believe in this world to be true, the less physical darkness I truly believe is even here. So that's the intention of this episode, to shed light on a more negative topic. Although, of course, there's always good and bad in all species. There are good reptilians out there. There just tend to be a little bit more negative reptilians from my own personal experiences with them. In this episode specifically, I wanted to talk about reptilian propaganda that you may or may not even be aware of, because I have been tricked personally by reptilian propaganda in the past, and I didn't realize that that's exactly what was happening. So I want for you to be made aware of how this can happen. You know, we think that human beings have propaganda. We learn about this in US history, like, oh, the propaganda from this war. But actually, to this day, reptilians are using propaganda in a very different way on a personal level. And I just want you to be aware of it and at least learn from my own mistakes and my own experiences. So let's get into it. There are two main experiences that I want to talk to you about when it comes to being tricked by reptilian propaganda. And I'm not talking about the propaganda that we're aware of, the stuff that we see on TV, the different programming that's out there, etc. These are two very personal experiences that I've had that I want to shed light on. And the first has to do with a reptilian channeler that I became very fixated on. And this guy is from YouTube. And then the second story is about a book that I bought to learn more about my Arcturian ET lineage, because that is my galactic origin, and how the book itself was actually reptilian propaganda. It was so fascinating to finally bring that into my awareness. These reptilians are super tricky. In my first reptilian propaganda experience, I was on YouTube and I was actually very interested to see how much information is out there on YouTube about the reptilians. And I came across this one guy who is a reptilian channeler. I am not going to mention his name. I do not want you to go down this rabbit hole. I think that he has incredible power and an incredible stronghold on his audience, to the point in which he literally hypnotizes people. And I don't want that to happen to you, but I will still share my story. When I was looking up this guy, again, he was a reptilian channeler. So what that means is that he was able to channel the actual voice and energy of a reptilian. And when he was channeling, the voice actually came through really scary and dark and husky and very masculine and just extremely intimidating. I have never, ever heard a voice channeler like this before, where the entity itself is extremely intimidating. For me, this was something new, and it was something that captivated me, and that's why I did continue to watch his videos. I was watching this guy's videos for hours one night, like long into the night, and I am not usually somebody who stays up past 9 o'clock, but I was up until like midnight watching this guy's videos, and it wasn't just of him channeling the reptilian, it was of him talking about certain things. He has really long videos of book recommendations, and I was sitting there studiously writing down every single book recommendation that this guy had. I was so extremely captivated by his knowledge and what he was sharing. And I was really taking to heart everything that this guy was saying. And that is unlike me. Usually I do not put so much faith and trust and interest in somebody new that I find on YouTube. I don't actually consume social media a lot, which is interesting for me to say considering I'm always on social media posting my videos, but that's what I'm doing is like I'm posting and I'm not usually consuming because I am usually very cognizant of where my energy is going. And so much of my energy was going to this man. And later it alarmed me. But at the time I was so intrigued and so captivated by his brilliance. Now, this guy was outwardly saying so much about the reptilians. He was saying we have to respect them. They're really strong beings. He was also saying things like a human being would never ever be able to stomach the presence of a physical reptilian in the 3D. So to say that if a human being were to actually see a reptilian in the physical, he literally said we would die of a heart attack because of the shock it would have on our nervous system because we'd be so scared of the reptilian. And this guy had such an ambiance of confidence. He seemed extremely intelligent. There was not one etc. when he was talking. It was just like a strict line of like perfect English. English wasn't even his first language. As I'm listening to his videos, I started to get this feeling of, something isn't right. Because this guy was literally so confident that I started to question my own confidence and my own person because I started thinking like, holy shit, like I want to be like this guy. Like he is so smart. And yeah, we need to respect the reptilians. Wow. And this was at a time before Coming Out Cosmic was born. So I was not posting about aliens on social media yet. And I was thinking, okay, so I need to start incorporating some of this guy's language in my own videos. And I need to start telling people that they ought to respect the reptilians. They're so strong. They're so much stronger than human beings. Like we don't even know what they're capable of. And by the way, you should look up this guy on YouTube because he's so magnetic. And that's when I stopped myself and I was like, oh shit, there is something going on here. And I need to talk with my friend Laura from lauradchannels.com. She is a highly intuitive psychic channeler, a very trusted channeler who discovered her abilities to channel higher dimensional beings during a quantum healing hypnosis therapy session, QHHT. And so I just sent her a YouTube video of this guy talking. And I was like, Laura, I've never seen a reptilian channeler before. This is the only guy I can find. Again, don't go looking for him. And I know I might not sound very convincing, but I'm warning you, don't go looking for him unless you really, really, really feel called to try to find this guy on social media. But I'm not telling you his name because I'm here to protect. But anyway, after I sent the YouTube link to Laura, she was like, holy shit. She was like, this guy himself is not just reptilian himself, but I have suspicion that his higher self is part of the most royal upper echelons of draconians out there. I don't know how much you guys know about reptilians versus draconians. They're very similar. They're basically lizard people, ET species. They don't have humanity's best interests in mind, the majority of them. And the draconians are of the upper echelons. Draconians can usually have like wings and tails, and I look at them as the more militant species, the more commanders, if you will. And then the reptilians are more the on-the-ground soldiers who carry out the draconians' bidding. That's how I see them. Laura was telling me, wow, this guy is extremely service to self, and this is the most hidden way that I have ever seen a reptilian do this. So a couple things about service to self. They say that in the alien world, there are different types of aliens that subscribe to different types of philosophies. One might even call this a religion of theirs, take it or leave it. But there are aliens out there who are more service to self, and then there are aliens who are more service to others. In simple terms, service to others would be more of the benevolent aliens who are actually here to like help humanity and to help others. Service to self would be the aliens that are more malevolent, that are more all for themselves, as you can imagine. They tend to be more for the benefit of themselves and they don't really care about human beings. And even though this guy on YouTube was coming off as service to others because he was teaching, he was sharing his wisdom, he was sharing his book recommendations, he was making you feel very connected to the reptilian race, he was doing that under the guise of actually being service to self. He was not service to others. And Laura explained to me why this is. The reptilian was siphoning my energy. And this was made clear in the amount of hours I spent just listening to him. Not only was he siphoning my energy, but he was siphoning my confidence as well, because he got me questioning before I even started coming out cosmic. He had me questioning of how I was now going to talk about and approach the subject of reptilians. And in my mind, I was convinced through this guy that I need to talk about them highly. I need to really warn people that, you know what, they can be scary and they're very powerful. And he even had me questioning if I wanted to start coming out cosmic. Like all of these thoughts were going through my mind when I was having that crisis and I realized that something was wrong with listening to this guy. And that's when I texted Laura. And then it also got me wondering too, because this guy was saying how if a human being were to see a reptilian in the physical, they would literally die of shock and of a heart attack. Like, that's pretty scary. That's scary messaging. And it got me thinking because my dad has seen a draconian in the physical, and his reaction to the draconian was extremely opposite. He had a very limited reaction to the draconian because my dad knows that he's extremely protected, and he looked at that experience as extremely mystical and intriguing. And the draconian actually ran away from my dad. And my dad has had other experiences where draconians come to him in the dream state. And the draconians, again, look at my dad and they run away. So they seem to be afraid of my father. And guess what? This is because human beings are way more powerful than anything else out there. In my opinion, we have all the high vibrational DNA. We've got some low vibrational DNA. So for somebody online who channels a reptilian to be telling human beings that they would die of a heart attack if they saw a draconian, that's very service to self. And I believe that that is very untrue because my father did not die when he saw a draconian. And guys, you should have seen the comments on this guy's YouTube page. Like, so many people were fawning over him and putting him on a pedestal and saying, oh my gosh, you are so amazing. I wish that I were like you. I wish I could channel reptilians. That's just dangerous. In my opinion, I would not recommend anybody go out there and put out using their free will into the universe saying, hey, I want to start channeling reptilians. I do not think that that is very safe because the majority of them out there do not have our best interests. Now, of course, again, good and bad in all species. My friend Laura actually channels one of the many councils of the universe. This one is called the Council of 12, and there are many councils of 12 out there, but one of the members of her Council of 12 is actually benevolent draconian. And so there are instances where there are benevolent service to others, draconians and reptilians, but this guy on YouTube was not it. After my conversation with Laura, I was like, okay, this really resonates with me. And she had told me, like, the experience is over. You no longer should be checking out this guy on YouTube. Your lesson was learned. Now carry on. And this story is just an example of how reptilians can still negatively influence. They can still use propaganda in a way to be service to self when in the presence of someone who is more awake. Because I think one of the misconceptions in spiritual awakening and in the spiritual community is that if you're awake, you know about the reptilians, you know better than to be fooled by the reptilians. However, the reptilians know that there are awake people who know about them. And even though they do try to convince others that they're not real, you know, like on YouTube, they'll have the little caution like, oh, reptilians are fiction. And then on TikTok, they'll take your videos down if you talk about them, unless you say that this is for entertainment only. And by the way, this podcast episode is for entertainment only. We all know that reptilians are not real. And reptilians know that we know about them. The trick is up. their time is limited. So they have to find other ways to try to infiltrate and influence us. And this guy on YouTube is one of the ways that they try to influence us to not step into our own authentic self, to not have confidence, to question our own abilities, and to really put all of our energy into this guy who channels reptilians. Like, I don't know. That should have been a red flag for me in the beginning, but I was so curious. And now I hope that you've learned from my mistake and you shouldn't go looking for this type of content on YouTube. If you do find it, please use your own discernment, use your own protection practices. And now you know how they can influence you even when you're awake to them. And one last thing that was very interesting about this guy on YouTube, when I was listening to him, and this was before I started talking to Laura about what he was actually doing, I started getting like messages and thoughts in my head that, oh, I should send this YouTube video to my brother. My brother is easily influenced. He doesn't have a ton of self-esteem and confidence, which is why I was like, oh, this guy can show him how to be confident and how to have self-esteem and how to talk in a way that naturally just comes off brilliant. But actually, that would have done the exact opposite if I had sent the YouTube link to my brother, because the guy was actually stealing confidence and energy and making you want to be more like him and not like your own authentic true self and shine your own light. So I just thought that was interesting because I've never thought that I should send any sort of alien content over to my brother. I mean, he's a believer, but I don't know how much he would actually resonate with it. So anyway, I think that this guy was trying to influence me to then pass on his videos to other people who are susceptible and could become very easy victims to the reptilian propaganda. So lesson learned for me, if you start becoming obsessed with listening to people, if you start putting somebody on a pedestal, if you start getting weird, icky feelings and you're not really sure why, or if you start losing your confidence and start thinking, wow, I want to be like this person. And that could be for anything. It doesn't have to be a reptilian channeler. It could be like an influencer online. I want to be like that person. Stop watching them, because you deserve to be your own authentic person. Shine your own authentic light. We need more of you in this world. We don't need more people or reptilians trying to convince you that you need to be something that you're not. Speaking of being something that you're not, I'd like to go into my next reptilian propaganda story, and it has to do with a book that I read, and I will actually share the book. And the reason I'm sharing with you the book and the author is because I would really love for you guys to listen to my story and then figure out what you'd like to do with the information that I present. If you do choose to purchase the book and flip through it and then give this guy a low rating on Amazon, that would make my day. And it would make my day even more if you purchase the book through my Amazon storefront link, because even though I do not promote giving this guy any money, I do think that if you are extra curious and you want to learn how to tap into using your discernment and figuring out when reptilians are actually tricking you, I think that this book is a good example of that. So instead of giving him all of the money himself, I could get a percentage, a very small percentage of commission if you are interested in purchasing the book. Of course, you do not have to, and I do not recommend that you purchase the book because I think that you'll get enough information just from my story. I'll link my Amazon storefront in the show notes if you are interested. The book is called How Arcturians Are Healing Planet Earth, and the author is Wayne Brewer. I have to say, when I first looked up this book, I was just generally looking up information about the Arcturians. That's my galactic origin. And this book kind of called to me. I was like, oh, I want to know how Arcturians are healing planet Earth. Let me warn you, this book has hardly anything to do with the Arcturians. Actually, multiple people in the comments, in the reviews on Amazon have said, like, this book title is extremely misleading because it does not actually tell you how Arcturians are healing planet Earth. So let's start there. The title is extremely misleading. And then when you flip to the back of the book and you look at the picture of the author, there is a vibe that he gives off. And that's all I'm going to say, because I want for you to figure out the vibe yourself if you are interested. And you can just look at his picture on Amazon. Again, you don't have to purchase the book, but if you want to practice, there's a vibe that he gives off. As I'm reading the book, I will say that the book started off as a good book. I was like, okay, like this is actually pretty interesting. It was a quick read. He didn't use very complicated language. I did notice that the author had a bit of an ego because he was talking about himself a lot. And if I remember correctly, he was talking about like certain accolades that he had and certain qualifications, which is fine. I understand that people want to be able to defend their knowledge, etc., but it did seem very ego driven. It seemed pretty service to self. The Arcturians were not mentioned in the book until like halfway through. And full disclosure, I did not finish the book. I think I had about 2 chapters left because there was something that was said in the book that I immediately did not agree with, and I closed it. And I was literally thinking of throwing the book in the garbage. I'm not even kidding. I was like, this is garbage worthy. And I am not usually that type of person. I care for planet Earth. I don't want to be throwing things out and not recycling them, etc. But I really didn't want for anybody else to read this book because I was in such disagreement with it. And the only way that I would recommend you reading it is only if you are trying to practice understanding reptilian propaganda. So the majority of the book was about how this guy, Wayne Brewer, is good at removing reptilians from people. And he had a team of people who would do this. So what he means by removing reptilians from people, and I understand what he's trying to say, there are different ways that people are influenced by the reptilians. And one of the ways that someone can be influenced is through reptilian attachments. If you are in a very low vibrational state, you can physically have an entity attach itself to you. It's not always a reptilian. It could be like a bad spirit, etc. This actually happened to my friend Kelsey, and if you're interested in learning about her negative entity attachment story, it is very good and it's actually kind of funny. And that, I think, is episode 2 of this podcast, so you can see how attachments can actually influence us. But now a reptilian can attach itself to you. From my understanding, this is what happens to celebrities. They have a reptilian attachment that's agreed to be attached to them when they accept fame and fortune. That's the whole idea of them trading their soul. And instead, a reptilian attachment is just attached to them, kind of controlling them when they're in that fame. That could be a future podcast episode. But yes, that's what Wayne Brewer did, was he would remove these reptilian attachments. Now, the thing that the author said that I was in strict disagreement with, and I was very uncomfortable, upset about, I was like, this is complete bullshit. He was raising the argument that Arcturians, which are high vibrational aliens, again, there's good and bad in all species, high and low vibe in all species, but they tend to be very high vibrational and healing. He was arguing that the Arcturians are the only beings in this entire universe that can remove reptilian attachments and who can have influence over the reptilians. I had never heard of this. I mean, I know that Arcturians are extremely powerful, but guess who is even more powerful, in my opinion, than any of these alien beings? Human beings. Human beings are extremely powerful creator beings, and I will say this as often as I can because I really, really want for you to let this sink in and for you to believe this because it's true. Human beings have extremely high vibrational DNA going all the way from the angelics. And yes, we can also have low vibrational DNA, but we are extremely powerful. So for this author to be saying that Arcturians are the only ones that can remove reptilians and actually get them to go away, I thought that was extremely disempowering for the human. And that is reptilian propaganda. The reptilians want for you to believe that you cannot do anything about them, which is not true. Because again, going back to the stories of when my dad saw the draconians in the physical and in the dream state, obviously he's doing something to get them away from him because they're afraid of him. I actually think my dad was some sort of galactic commander in a past life. We'll have to dig into that in another podcast episode. And another thing, I personally have had a lot of reptilian experiences, both in the physical and in the dream state, just like my father, and I've been able to get rid of them just fine. So that really pissed me off when I read that in the book because I'm like, this is just untrue and this is reptilian propaganda. Now, normally I don't put reviews on Amazon, but I felt very compelled to write a review about this book. And so this was my Amazon review, 1 out of 5 stars. And the title of my review was From the Arcturians, more like from the Reptilian PR team, trash this book. And here goes the review. I'm throwing this book in the garbage. I am 100% serious. First, the book is very disempowering to humans. The author writes, and quote, "The fact is that you and I cannot do this at all. A human being does not have the power to remove reptilians. It's the Arcturians, not us, who remove reptilians." End quote. Page 149. Human beings are magical, powerful, incredible creators. So I staunchly disagree with the author on the above. In addition, the author speaks in many absolutes. He says things like, quote, "There are no good reptilians," end quote. That's false. Quote, Any protection rituals against reptilians will have no effect whatsoever if they are already inside you. End quote. That's false. And I could go on. Does this author not realize that we live in a universe where absolutely anything is possible? Also, title is extremely misleading. I come from the Arcturians and wanted to learn more about my galactic heritage. This book presents little information about the Arcturians, and it definitely does not talk about how they heal planet Earth. I get a weird vibe from the author. Even looking at his picture on the back of the cover gives me the ick. There's something about him. My gut says he may be working for the other side, trying to scare humans into believing they are powerless, and only if they have a connection to the Arcturians are they protected against the reptilians. What a crock of BS. Don't waste your time and money on this book unless you want to lower your vibration and be in a state of powerlessness and fear. That was my Amazon review. I'm not trying to trash the guy. I just staunchly disagree with him and his viewpoints. And also, many people who have given the book lower star readings have suspected that the author and his friends are uprating the book a lot, because even if you don't suspect that this is negative reptilian propaganda, that's service to self, if you read the book, it's not that great. Throughout the book, the author seems like he's got a huge ego. It's not written very well, so I don't know how this book could get anything more than 3 stars, to be honest, from a normal person who's not even realizing that it's reptilian propaganda, in my opinion. So again, if you feel compelled to check out this book and you're curious and you want to read through it, I don't recommend purchasing it and giving that guy any sort of money. But if you do purchase it and you also agree with me, you feel like this is negative reptilian propaganda, then go ahead and rate him a low rating if you would like, if you feel like that's what he deserves, and you can purchase it from my Amazon storefront. So those were my 2 experiences of being tricked by the reptilians, where the reptilians know that you know about them, and now they're going to put it in your face as to how powerless you are against them, which I do not agree with. Again, human beings are extremely powerful creator beings. You have so much creative energy and so much high vibration within you, especially if you're attracted and you resonate with this podcast, because I feel like all of you listeners wouldn't be here unless you have such an amazing light to shine and show the world. So shine your light. Be authentic. Don't let anybody, not a reptilian channeler, not an influencer, not anybody try to tell you that you need to be somebody else, because that's just them siphoning your confidence and your energy. And most definitely just be very discerning whenever you read about aliens in general, but especially the reptilians, because there will be certain things out there that are poised as, oh, this will help you for the benefit of your own good to understand the reptilian race. Here, learn about it in this capacity, and it will actually be more of a service to self type of dialogue or type of book or type of YouTube channel. So always listen to your own intuition. And if you have any examples of reptilian propaganda that you fell for, I would love to hear it. I'm at Coming Out Cosmic on all major social media platforms. And again, if you wanted to check out more about the reptilians, check out my Reptilians course in my Penn site link in bio. Thank you so much for being here with me today on this episode about the reptilians. I always try to keep it high vibrational, and I hope that you have a really excellent day, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Remember, you're not crazy. You are just very, very cosmic. Bye.